Chapter 4. Capitalism and the State. Bernstein says that another requirement for slowly reaching socialism is the way the government changes within society. Many people say that today's government is a class state because it represents a particular class. But this idea should not be seen as an unchangeable fact, just as we should not see capitalist society in a fixed way. The government became capitalist when the middle class won politically. As capitalism grows, it changes the nature of the government. The government gets a wider role and new duties, especially in economic life, and it must step in and control society more and more. In this way, capitalism slowly blends the government with society. In other words, the government's role returns to being part of society. This is what Marx meant when he called labor laws the first clear action of society in important social matters, a view that Bernstein strongly supports. At the same time, capitalism also changes the government in another way. Today, the government is mainly an organization of the ruling class. It takes on tasks that help society only when those tasks also serve the interests of the dominant class. For example, labor laws are made as much for the benefit of the capitalist class as for society in general. But this balance works only up to a certain point. When capitalism reaches a high level, the interests of the rich and the needs of economic progress start to clash even among capitalists. We believe this conflict has already begun. It shows up in two important parts of modern society. One is the policy of tariff barriers, and the other is militarism. These two factors have played a crucial, even revolutionary, role in the history of capitalism. Without tariff protection, big industry could not have grown in many countries. But now, the situation has changed. Today, tariff protection is not used to help new industries grow but rather to artificially keep old forms of production alive. From the point of view of capitalist development, that is, looking at the world economy, it does not really matter if Germany sells more goods to England or if England sells more to Germany. In this view, one might say that the old system, symbolized by the blackamoor, has done its job and now should step aside. Because all branches of industry depend on each other, putting a protectionist tariff on any one product will raise the cost of making other products in the country. This, in turn, slows down industrial growth. However, this is not seen as a problem by the capitalist class. While industry itself does not need tariffs to grow, business owners want tariffs to protect their own markets. Today, tariffs are no longer used to protect a new, developing part of capitalism from a more advanced part. Instead, they are used by one national group of capitalists against another. Tariffs are also not needed to help industry build and control the local market anymore. Now, they are essential for forming business cartels, groups of companies that fight against the whole consumer society. What shows the true nature of modern customs policies is that, nowadays, agriculture, not industry, is the main factor in setting tariffs. In this way, customs protection has become a tool to express old feudal interests in a new, capitalist form. A similar change has happened with militarism. If we look at history as it really was, not as it might have been or should have been, we must agree that war was a necessary part of capitalist growth. The United States, Germany, Italy, the Balkan states, and Poland all grew their capitalist systems because of wars, whether they won or lost. In the past, when countries were divided inside or isolated from the rest of the world and needed to be overcome, militarism played a revolutionary role for capitalism. But now the situation is different. If world politics are filled with dangerous conflicts, it is no longer a matter of opening new countries to capitalism. Instead, it is about old European conflicts that have spread to other lands and exploded there. The countries at war today in Europe and on other continents are not split into capitalist nations on one side and backward nations on the other. They are states pushed into war because they are all similarly advanced in capitalism. Because of this, a war is sure to have a deadly effect on capitalist development. It will cause a very big change and disruption in the economies of all countries. However, things look very different when we think about them from the point of view of the capitalist class. For them, militarism has become very important. First, it is a way to fight for national interests against other nations. Second, it serves as a method for placing financial and industrial capital. Third, it acts as a tool for controlling the working people within a country. These interests do not really have anything to do with the natural growth of capitalist production. What shows the true nature of today's militarism is that it grows in all countries from its own built-in, mechanical force, a phenomenon that was completely unknown many decades ago. We see this in the deadly character of the coming explosion, which is sure to happen even though the goals and reasons for the conflict are not clear. Driven by capitalist development, militarism has turned into a kind of disease of capitalism. When capitalist growth and the interests of the ruling class clash, the government sides with the rich. Its policies, like those of the bourgeoisie, end up fighting against the progress of society. This makes the government lose its role as a representative of everyone and become a government for just one class. In other words, the side of the government that works for all and the side that works only for the rich become more separate and even oppose each other. This conflict grows stronger over time. On one side, the government takes on more jobs for the good of everyone by getting involved in social life and trying to control society. But on the other side, because it is a government for the rich, it uses its power in ways that only help the rich. This shows up in areas like militarism, tariffs, and colonial policies, which hurt society as a whole. The control the government has over society is mixed with its nature as a tool for the ruling class, as can be seen in how labor laws are used everywhere. However, things look very different when we think about them from the point of view of the capitalist class. For them, militarism has become very important. First, it is a way to fight for national interests against other nations. Second, it serves as a method for placing financial and industrial capital. Third, it acts as a tool for controlling the working people within a country. These interests do not really have anything to do with the natural growth of capitalist production. What shows the true nature of today's militarism is that it grows in all countries from its own built-in, mechanical force, a phenomenon that was completely unknown many decades ago. We see this in the deadly character of the coming explosion, which is sure to happen even though the goals and reasons for the conflict are not clear. Driven by capitalist development, militarism has turned into a kind of disease of capitalism. Looking at the history of how governments have grown, Bernstein and Conrad Schmidt believe that adding more social control will directly bring about socialism. But this idea is becoming more and more at odds with what really happens every day. The plan for slowly turning capitalism into socialism means changing how private property works and how the government runs things, step by step. But because of the natural laws of society, these two parts actually move in the opposite direction. Production becomes more social, and the government gets more involved in running production. Yet, at the same time, private property turns into a clear way for capitalists to profit from the work of others, and the government's control becomes filled with the interests of the rich. In other words, both the political side of capitalism, the government, and the legal side, the property laws, become more and more capitalist, not more socialist. This creates two big problems for the idea of gradually bringing in socialism. Fourier once had a wild idea of changing all the seas into tasty lemonade using special communities called phalansteries. In a similar way, Bernstein tries to change the bitter world of capitalism into a sweet socialist world by slowly adding small reforms, but his idea is just as weak and fantastical. While the way things are made in capitalist society is getting closer to how they would be in a socialist society, the government and legal rules are building a growing wall between the two systems. This wall does not come down on its own. In fact, social reforms and democracy only make it stronger. Only a strong, revolutionary change, where the working class takes political power, can break down this wall.